All right, thank you guys for joining us today. Today we're going to be talking about Google Slides, and we're going to go beyond Google Slides. So we're going to be talking about all the ways that you can use Google Slides instead of just a presentation tool. It is, like I said yesterday, it is a fabulous presentation tool, but it has so many more abilities and things that you can do with it. So we're going to kind of go through those today, and we're going to share some resources with you guys, share some ideas. So we're going to be talking about all the ways that we can use Google Slides instead of just a presentation tool.
So before we begin, just wanted to go over some housekeeping tools for the webinar. There's a chat feature that everyone was just introducing themselves in. That's excellent. If you have a question that comes up, there's a Q&A section within this webinar. If you want to go ahead and type your question in the Q&A section, it gives you the ability to make yourself anonymous, or you can put your name there. That way, when we finish this explanation on Google Slides, we can get to the Q&A section. It has all the questions there that make it a little easier for Marshall and I. If you can't find the Q&A section, you can always also just drop in your question into chat, and one of us during the Q&A section, or even one of the other teachers here, we all just work together and we can answer those questions.
Okay, so like we said, we're going to be talking about Google Slides and ways that we can use it beyond just a presentation tool. So we're going to first talk about what Google Slides is. We're going to talk about some of the controls within Google Slides. And then we're going to talk about what else can we do with slides besides just creating presentation. What are some other ideas that we can do? We're going to look at grid view. We're going to look at the master. We're going to look at the page setup. We're going to talk about inserting audio and video. Lots of things. We're going to talk about closed captioning. We're going to talk about images, masking images, cropping, choose your own adventure things. So we have a lot that we're going to run through today. So there's going to be a lot of information, but lots of links, lots of links to resources for you guys. And then also, like all the other PDs, this will be uploaded to our YouTube channel afterwards. So if you need to go back, rewatch it, you have that option as well.
So first, we just wanted to give you just a little overview on Google Slides. When we think of Google Slides, we always relate it to PowerPoint. So it's just a presentation tool. That's just a simple, basic term of it. With Google Slides, you can make slideshows. You can share them with others. You can work collaboratively. When you work collaboratively, you can edit them in real time. You could have all 30-something of your students in Google Slides all at once, each writing and creating on each slide themselves. You can embed videos, images, audio. There's a built-in research and image tool, and you can also import and export different slides.
So how to use Google Slides, we're just going to talk about some of the controls here. So if we wanted to add a new slide, there's going to be that plus sign in the top left-hand corner. We just click on the plus, it's going to add a new slide. Next to that, you'll see the little down arrow. That's going to give you the option to choose different types of layouts. So whether you want two text boxes side by side, whether you want just a big title section in the middle, whether you want a blank slide, you get some options there of different kind of slide layouts. And then next to that, moving down the line, we have our text box tool. So that's the box with the T inside of it. That's where you can add a text box. The nice thing about Google Slides is you can add a text box literally anywhere, and you can move it around. You can put it wherever you want. Next to that is our image tool. So from there, if I click on that, I can pull something. I can pull an image from my drive. I can do a quick Google search. If I search the web for an image, the nice thing is it's going to just pop up a little window on the side, and I can do my quick Google search right there. So I don't have to leave my slide to search for an image. This is nice for our students too, because then they don't get confused about which tab they're on and all that stuff. So it keeps them right there. And then I can, like I said, I can pull from my Google Drive, I can do a search, or I can upload. So if I'm on my personal computer or something, I can upload an image from there as well. Next, we have our background tool. So I can go in, I can change the color of my background. I can add, like in this example, it's a little bit of like a gradient background. So the sides are a little darker, but then it kind of lightens up as we get into the middle. I can add images to the background. This is where I would go through and kind of customize my background. And then I have my theme section. So Google kind of has some default themes that they have included into Google Slides. If you wanted to choose from one of those, you could click on themes, and it's going to give you the options of different themes that you can choose from.
And then when we actually click a text box, there are a whole new set of options that come up. So when you click a text box, one of the new buttons would be a paint can. The paint can actually fills in the background. So I could fill in the background with any color I want. Right now, the text box is just set to the paint can to be transparent. And then right next to that would be a border color. So you can add a border color to anything that you want. So you can put a border right around the words that you have. And then right next to that is the weight of that border that you can put. So you can make the line thicker or thinner depending on the weight that you select. Then you can choose the font style. So when you highlight all of the words, you can change the font style. You can make it cursive, you can make it Comic Sans, you can do Times New Roman. There's a lot of different font options available. And next to that, that's where you can choose the different size. You can make your words bold, italics, underline. You can also change the color. So depending on the background or just the colors that you want in the slide, you can change all the colors. So if you look at the slide here, you see the word Google. Every single letter has a different color. That was all done above. The next one is highlight. So I can actually highlight any words on my slide and I can highlight them in different colors. This is a new button. It used to be connected with the font color, but now they've separated it, so it makes it a lot easier to handle. And then we're going to talk about alignment. So if I wanted to have all of my text aligned to the left, the center, or the right, I would go to the very first button. If I wanted to look at the spacing in between my lines, or if I wanted to add different bullet points, whether I wanted numbers or different symbols, I would also go here.
Okay, so if we are going to be, we talked about inserting an image into our slides. So when we click on that image button, which is we usually we tell the students click on the box with the mountain, we get these options. So first thing we can do is we can upload from our computer. So if we're on a desktop or we're on a something other than our Chromebook, we can go upload from computer. We can pull it from our computer. We can pull it from downloads. We can search the web. So this is what I was referring to earlier. I can click search the web. It's going to pull up a little Google search box next to my slides. I can do a quick search for my image, pull it in that way. I can access my drive. So any images that I save in my drive, I can pull them up from there. If I have the URL for a picture, I can use that there, or I can do the camera. So I can use my Chromebook camera and I can pull in images that way. Students, I'm not sure if students, I don't think students have access to Google Photos, but we have access to Google Photos. So if you have something saved in your Google Photos, you can pull it in from there as well.
And then, so now we're just going to talk about adjusting an image. If you add an image on your slide, there are a whole new set of buttons and options that actually come up. So if you just look at the top, there, that original image, and then you'll notice that I added in the image all throughout. That way you kind of have a visual of what happens. So the very first buttons toward the left all talk about that border. And you notice that the border was actually the same options when you had a text box. Well, you can change the color of the border. So I put a blue border, I made a thicker line, and I also made them dashed. That all is within those options. But I could also crop the image. So let's say I didn't want all the grass in the background of the puppy, I just wanted the puppy's face. I could crop the image that way. I can also double click on any image and then I can crop it. So when you double click on an image, it'll get a black line around it. When you see that bold black line, that's how you know you're in the cropping phase of an image. And then you can just drag the corners of the image to cut away the background. You can also mask an image. So if you click on the down caret arrow right next to that little crop symbol, then you can actually put your image inside of a shape. And so they give you different shapes that you can play around with. So here I cropped and I used the mask image to put the puppy inside of a circle. Then there's the format options. So these are just filters, normal filters that students are aware of through Snapchat or Instagram, PicArt, or like TikTok. Right here, I used a filter to make a filter on red. I put a little mirror image. I could put a shadow. There's so much that you can do from these format options. And then one of the very last things that you can do, not just with pictures, but with any text that you have, is you can also just animate. So when you animate, you can make images fly in from the left, from the right, fade in, or even fade out. And so right here, you see that I made the image slowly fade in from the left. That was just clicking on the animate button after I clicked on the image, and I literally told it to fade in, and then I give it a direction.
Okay, so what are some ways that we can use Google Slides? So many different uses for it. So we're going to talk about resizing the page. So you can go through and you can change the size of the page. So by default, it's set to like presentation mode, like a widescreen, but you can change the size. So if you want it to be 8.5 by 11, you can change it to 8.5 by 11. If you want it 5 by 5, you can do that. You can also put things into grid view. And then, excuse me, we're going to talk about embedding audio and video, talk about ways that we can do stop motion animation with Google Slides, automatic timing, adding closed captioning. We talked about masking the image. And then we're also going to talk about editing the master.
So here, we're just going to talk about resizing the Google slide. Marshall had said that you can resize a Google slide to mirror an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. You can even make a Google slide mirror the size of your door in your classroom or one of those trifold boards. That way, students that don't want to actually cut and paste or draw on a physical trifold, they can do electronic version. So how you would actually resize a Google slide is you would go to File in the upper left-hand corner, go down to Page Setup, and then a box is going to show up. You'll click where it says widescreen, which is the default setting, and then you could plug in any size. You can do centimeters, you can do inches, you can create your own 5 by 7 flashcards. There's so much that you can do by just changing the page setup. And if you were to do an 8.5 by 11, you could have your students create something and then you could print it out for them as well.
So why resize it? What's the point of doing that? Like that's, so like we said, you can make posters. So if you wanted to make a poster, print it out, you could do that. If you wanted to make a pamphlet, if you wanted to make a trifold, if you wanted to make a web page, if you wanted to make an ebook, a portfolio, different homework, okay, those are things that you can do just by changing the page size. All of these examples that we have here are all examples of things that were made within Google Slides, but you can see some look like magazines, some look like newspapers, some are those like old school motivational posters, and all those were done is just going in and resizing the size of the slide, and then you're just working in the size that you created. And all of these are hyperlinked, so if you wanted an example of the People magazine, if you click on it, it's going to take you to that template so you can use it. Same thing with the National Geographic or the comic book or the Time magazine. These are all hyperlinked, so you can pull these and you can save copies for yourself and use with yourself or with your students.
And then here are just some images of student examples. So you can see in the upper left-hand corner, a student created an ebook all about bacteria. And then right next to that, a student used Google Slides to create a type of organizational tool to look at the internal, external parts of plants and animals. And then next to that, the coral reefs, that's actually a museum kiosk. So when you go to different museums or when you go to like any place that has those interactive kiosks, you click and it goes to the next screen. A student actually did that. So they talked about coral reefs and then they had a little button that says, go to the next page. You click that and it took you to another page. And they made this wonderful interactive museum kiosk as their presentation for coral reefs. So they were able to be so creative where if they had a pencil and paper, they wouldn't have been able to be as creative as they were. Then you can see on the bottom, students are explaining gingerbread houses, and then there's a math problem. So a student put in a picture of a math problem that they solved on a whiteboard and then explained by typing next to it how they actually solved that math problem. So there's so many ways in order to just use Google Slides to take it out of just the normal presentation mode.
So next thing that we're going to talk about is grid view. So if you are looking at that page of examples, let's say you're using it for kids to show their work on a math problem, and you have a shared slide, all your kids are working on the same slide, you have 32 kids in your class. So by default, I would have to go through and I have to scroll through and I have to click on each slide to see my students' work. A nice thing that you can do is you you can enable grid view so you can see more slides at one time. The way that you would do this is you would go to view, click on grid view, and it would bring up your grid view. Or at the bottom, you're going to see the little image that you see there that's like the 3x2 grid there. If you click on that, it's going to enable grid view. So then you're able to see multiple slides at one time. So if you had students working on a collaborative slide and you wanted to check multiple slides at one time, you could enable grid view and see more slides at one time.
Now, why use grid view? Well, you can see all of your student work at once. So let's say that you were in Google Classroom and you uploaded a Google slide to them. You could share it with them so that they all have editing rights, and you could see every student working on their individual slide. Collaboration. Have students work together. And then also a huge one, especially for us secondary teachers, when you have 180 something students, opening up 180 something Google slides takes a very, very long time. Just waiting for the Google slide to open, just waiting for it to load. It takes so much less time. If I have 6 periods, I assign 6 different slides to all my students all through Google Classroom, and I only open up 6 different Google slides, but I see all of my students' work right next to each other. But this also has a different meaning as well. Students work well when they can see each other's work. Some students, they don't need to see anything and they know what they're doing right away. Some of our students need a little bit of motivation. They need a little spark to get their thinking going. When you have students work in this type of collaboration with grid view, you're enabling all of your students to look at ideas of others and kind of figure out exactly what they want. Maybe they didn't know that they could set up a slide a certain way, or they could put an image on the background, but then they see one of their classmates do it, and the work that they can now try to achieve just heightens tenfold just because they were able to look at a different example. So there's so many reasons in order to do grid view.
Okay, so how would we use this in Google Classroom? How would we allow this to happen in Google Classroom? So I create my template, Google slide template that I'm going to share with my students. I go ahead and I'm going to go in and I'm going to create an assignment in Google Classroom. I'm going to give it my title. I'm going to give it my instructions. And then I'm going to go down to adding my file to my assignment. So here I have pick an image. That's the name of my slides. And so by default, it's going to say students can view the file. What I want to choose is I want to choose students can edit the file. So that means that's one slides document that everybody's going to be editing at the same time. So this is how you would want to set it up so they could be working collaboratively. And then this is all done through Google Classroom.
Another option that you have in Google Slides is to embed a video or audio. How you would embed a video or audio is there's an insert button on the very top. You would click insert and then you would go down to audio and you would pick an audio file. Or if you wanted a video, you would go to insert and then video, and you would click on the video button, and you could either embed a video from YouTube, you could put in a URL, or you could pull a video from your Google Drive. So let's say you use Screencastify and you recorded a video, then you could go ahead and you can pull that video right from your Google Drive and embed it right into the slide presentation, just like you've been seeing here.
And so why would we want to embed video or audio? So it makes it nice for ebooks. So it helps with listening skills. So I can have, if I'm teaching younger grades, I can have some text on the screen, but then I can have that audio file or that video file of myself reading, and I'm showing them like an exemplar example of how, you know, they can listen to it to help practice with their fluency. Foreign language. If I'm going through, I would have loved this when I was taking my foreign language classes in high school, being able to listen and hear how the words are pronounced. Vocabulary practice, knowing, being able to hear those words, hear how they're supposed to be pronounced. Historical projects. So instead of, maybe you have that student who isn't the most outgoing and doesn't like to come up in front of the class and give, a formal presentation. Well, they can create their presentation here. They can add either their video or their audio of themselves, add it to their slides. Now they're giving their presentation that way. It can be great for science experiments, explanations. So they can have their data and their stuff on their slide, and then they're explaining. And then it helps with us as teachers. We can hear how our students read. So using annotation and pausing and how they're reading, practicing their fluency. I've seen kindergartners use this where the teacher has created a book on Google Slides, and then the students are using Screencastify and they're recording their voice. They're not seeing them, they're just hearing their voice, and the teacher now can listen to the way that their students are reading, and they can be able to provide them feedback just by going through their slides presentation that they're working on.
So here's just a very simple template of what you could do with Google Slides. So you could have a student have a written explanation on the top of their slide, and then they could input a video on the bottom. Or they could input an image or a drawing that they did. You could have students literally use a pencil and paper and draw out their thinking, but then submit it to you in a picture format on a Google slide. That way you can see the image, and then they can still create a video of themselves, whether it's with the Chromebook camera that's built in, Screencastify, Flipgrid, any of these resources. The student can hold up their image and point out to you what they've drawn and explain it. And that just works on the literacy skills. It works on their understanding. You as a teacher now know their thought process. So you now know, well, where are the holes? Where are the gaps? Much better than just being able to look at their writing on a piece of paper. You now have all this data a lot faster in order to kind of guide your instruction for the next day, the next hour, the next class period.
So to be able to record on a Chromebook camera, so using the camera on your Chromebook to record a video, okay, you don't need any type of special app to do that. You can do it right within the camera. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to click on the kind of a little app launcher. It's going to be in the bottom left-hand corner of your Chromebook screen. It's going to look like a circle. If you click on that, and then you're going to click on the up arrow to show more, and then you're going to choose your camera, and then you're going to choose video, and then you're going to start recording, and then it's going to upload to your Google Drive. And then once you've uploaded it to your Google Drive, now when you're in slides, you just go through the process of inserting a video. So you'd go to insert video, go into your Google Drive, find that video that you created, and then you're going to add it to your slides there. And then if you wanted to upload that video to Google Classroom, you could do the same thing. You could create classwork. You can go to add, and then you can go to your Google Drive, find the video, add it there as well. And we also have hyperlinked on here where it says click here for directions. We have hyperlink there for directions on going through how to do this process.
And then really quick, I wanted to add, I have given these printed directions to first grade students, and I gave it to them and I said, I want to see how far you can go. And that's all I said. And almost all of them in the classroom were able to record a video, put it in their slides. And those that weren't able to, these kids love helping each other. So they went around and they helped everyone. I just sat there and I just watched. So when we're back in the classroom, or even now, you can give all of these resources to your students and see what they can come up with, see what they can do. And it's going to essentially just blow your mind with what these first graders, kindergartners, second graders can do once they have those tools.
Go ahead.
So now we're going to talk about video recording with Screencastify. Screencastify is an extension that you can add to your Google Chrome browser. We've linked to it right here. So in the presentation copy that you have, you can actually click to it and it'll take you to the Chrome Web Store. When you add the extension, it'll show up in the upper right-hand corner of your Chrome browser. When you click that extension, you'll be able to choose some options for what you want to record. You could record just your browser tab. You could record your entire desktop. You could just record the webcam, so just your face. You could record your desktop with no audio or with audio. You could record your desktop with your face or without your face. So in the options here, I'm recording my desktop with my voice, but I had my webcam turned off so my face didn't show. Once you click record, the Screencastify will count down. It'll do a 3, 2, 1 right in the middle of your screen. And then you just start recording whatever tutorial, whatever explanation, whatever information you wanted for your students. Then when you're done, you just click stop recording, and Screencastify automatically opens up a new tab for you where it's saving the video that you just made, and it actually saves it right to your Google Drive. So when you go in your Google Drive, you'll have a whole folder that's titled Screencastify where you can find the video there. And then there's also some simple editing tools that Screencastify gives you. That way you can cut out the beginning and cut out the end of your video so students don't see you hitting the record button and hitting the stop button. But if you don't care if they see how you did it, because maybe that's part of the tutorial that you're creating, then just go ahead and share it to Google Classroom and you're all done.
So another thing that we are going to talk about is automatic timing. So if we wanted our slide presentation to just kind of move through on its own without us having to click on it, we're going to do something called publishing to the web. So what you're going to do is once you have that slide presentation all finished, you can go through, you can go to File, Publish to the Web, and you can choose either link or embed. So if I'm going to choose a link, it's going to give me a link. If I choose embed, it's going to give me some HTML code that I can use to embed it onto like a website or a blog or something like that. And then I'm going to go through and I'm going to select the timing of each slide. So do I want each slide to transition after 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 15 seconds, those types of things. And then I can click publish and it's going to give me that link or it's going to give me that embed code. And then I can also choose if I want it to just automatically start right when it loads. And then I can also choose if I want it to restart after it gets to the last slide. So I know some teachers have used this for like open house, back to school night things where they're kind of displaying student work and they just have their slide presentation rolling and they're not having to go up there and they're not having to click through the presentation. It's just kind of going on a loop and it's just constantly going. So this is another kind of hidden tool that you can use with Google Slides.
And then just some more ways of why you could use auto timing on slides. You can do stop motion animation. You can practice presenting. I would have students that if I gave them the chance, they would present for a whole 20 minutes in front of the class. So then you can set up everyone's slides to auto time in advance. That way you can get through all of the presentations that you need. You can easily time the presentations. If you have a 2-minute time limit, well, tell all the students it's 2 minutes. So when you publish your slides, you're going to have to figure out, do some simple math. How many slides do you have? You have 2 minutes. How many seconds do you need? Practice oral speaking. Auto timing the slides is really, really great, especially in secondary school. We go through oral speaking with our students. How many ums are you saying? How many pauses? Where are you looking? Where is your audience at? You can go through all of these different tasks. And then you can also easily access your presentations from anywhere. So let's say that you created something at home for open school night, and it's just all the pictures and all of the wonderful projects that your students have created, and you want to just have it cycle through all the pictures. If you create it at home, you don't have to worry about accessing anything. Maybe your computer or your desktop at school has to update. Mine always did when I needed it on the spot. So then I create it at home. I have a link. I go to the link, and then I'm good.
So stop motion, where this is going to be an example of setting up stop motion animation. So you're going to set this up, you're going to prepare slides like you normally would. And then you're going to duplicate each slide and you're going to move an image little by little. So it's kind of slowly. So in this example, we're moving a hummingbird. And so I duplicate a slide, I move it over a little bit. I duplicate the slide, I move it over a little bit. So when you're done, you're going to have a ton of slides, but then you're going to go through and we're going to do the publishing to the web like we just talked about. And then we're going to choose like the fastest that it can go. And then it'll go through and it'll just run through on its own. So it's like watching like a little animation just within Google Slides. This reminds me of, I know when I was a kid, I used to do these where we would draw like on a tablet and then you would kind of flip through the book. It's the same type of concept, only this is done digitally. So, yep. So you just draw a little bit and then on the next page, so they're just going through and they're moving the thing very incrementally and then they publish to the web, they let it play on its own, and then the hummingbird just moves on its own.
And why stop motion? You can illustrate so much. You can illustrate someone sailing in a ship. You can illustrate so many different science concepts, PE, even math. You can have students illustrate how they're dropping down, how they're multiplying, how they're dividing. And we have some examples. So there's the hummingbird example, of course, but there's some great student examples, especially the cell project. there is a student who just made it their own, and they made it a whole Mario theme, and they essentially made it a game, and they have the music in the background and the noises, and it's amazing all of the creativity and individuality that these students put into their projects.
Yeah, all these images are hyperlinked as well. So if you wanted to watch them, you just click on them and it'll bring up the stop motion animation that they created. Closed captioning. So this one is a cool tool that you can use when you're presenting slides. So when you go to present slides, you're going to see your little menu bar at the bottom, and you're going to choose closed captioning. And when you choose closed captioning, what it's going to happen is your computer's microphone is going to start picking up what you're saying, and it's just going to automatically start putting the closed captioning up there for you. It's using like Google Translate or something, and it's putting that up there. So it works. Sitar and I have both used it. It works really well. Yes, sometimes some of the words you say, it might get it wrong, but for the most part, it's going to get it right. So this is nice when, if you're presenting, you have students in the back who need it, you can have this and you can have the closed captioning up there. If you're doing a screencastify and you're going through a presentation, and you can have your closed captioning going and the words are there for you. And then you can also kind of, you can set where you want it. Do you want it at the bottom? Do you want it at the top? Do you want the text to be small? Do you want the text to be big? You can kind of customize it in that way.
And so why use closed caption? Some students learn by reading. They're not oral learners. So why not, if you can, just have closed captioning up? And you don't even have to have it up in the front of the board. You can have a computer right in front of that student in your classroom, or even now at their house, and they can just open up any slides presentation, hit present, and enable closed captioning. They don't have to have an image there. It can be a completely blank screen, but they're just using it that way. The closed captioning works. IEP and 504 students, this is amazing for some of them. Maybe they need that visual. Maybe you're having a class discussion, because some of our kids learn really, really well during those class discussions, but you have some students that they want to see the words. Or you have a student that speaks really, really softly on the other side of the classroom and you can't hear them. This is a great tool to use when you're having discussions, because you can have it projecting on the board. And it's also a good tool that I've used in the classroom where my students who are speaking softly, if the computer can't pick it up, then you're too quiet. And that kind of helps them raise their voice, because me telling them I can't hear them does nothing. They keep responding at the same volume. But if I tell them the computer can't hear them, it's vastly different and their volume definitely increases. And this also gives everyone a chance to get the same information. Let's say that they were looking out the window during a split second and they missed a few words that someone said. Well, it'll be there on the screen. That way everyone has an equal opportunity.
So we kind of talked about this before, but we're going to talk about masking an image. So I've inserted an image into my slide, and so now I want to put it within a shape. I don't want it to just be a square or a rectangle. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the image, and then I'm going to go up to my cropping tool. And then next to the cropping tool, I'm going to see the little down arrow caret, and then I can choose a shape. So I can crop it into a circle. I can crop it into an arrow, any type of shape that Google Slides provides. I can crop it into that. So it just adds a kind of custom look to the image, and it isn't just a rectangle or a square.
And why mask an image? Why not? It provides emphasis. You can provide more detail. Maybe there's something that you wanted all the students to look at. You can now mask it inside of a star or a circle. It provides that extra focus. It makes things more engaging for the students. We're always looking at little fun, cute ways to engage our students in what we're saying, because that's kind of what we're battling every day. We want them to be engaged in their learning. So why not teach them how to do this, but then we can also do it as well. And so masking an image is a great way to just take a simple square image and put it in a circle or a star or a wavy image or an arrow even.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about editing the master. So this is a nice feature, because what you can do is you can essentially have directions or any type of image or text on there, and the students cannot delete it. They can't move it around. They can't edit it. And this This is great, especially if you're doing a collaborative slide. Inevitably, somebody's going to click on something that they shouldn't be clicking on. And usually it's your directions. For some reason, they love clicking the directions and messing around with the directions. So what we would do is we would go in, edit the master, type in our directions as the master, and then they can't change anything because essentially it's putting that text as the background and they can't change the background. So what you would do is you would click on slide when you're in Google Slides, go down to select edit master, and then you can see all the different layouts. You can see all the different slide options, and you can change anything you want. You can change the background color. You can change text. You can add text. You can remove text boxes. You can add images. You can do all sorts of things. So I know a lot of teachers will use this, especially if they're going to have like a directions slide on their slides presentation, just so that way students aren't messing around with anything. If you were using this in a math assignment, a math lesson, you can set the math problems as the master, so the students can't edit the math. They can't delete the math problem. They can't do anything like that. But then you can still add text boxes so they can actually type, insert images, those types of things. But you can just set things as the master in the background where students cannot change or manipulate anything that you put in there.
And so when you actually open up the editing and master slide, how you know that you're editing the master is because everything kind of gets dark all around it. And then you can click, and you'll notice that if you click the text box, you have 4 different options: text box, title placeholder, subtitle placeholder, and body text placeholder. Anything that says placeholder means that the students can click in it and they can start typing. So when we open up a slide normally, there are these boxes that say put title here, put subtitle here. Those are those placeholder boxes. The first choice where it says text box, that is where we as a teacher would put a text box in our master copy that the students could not write in and they couldn't mess with. So that's where we have the directions. So in the previous slide, that video was just taking you through how to create a master with a direction, and then each group was having a specific slide with text placeholders where they could put the text, but they couldn't mess with the group 1 or group 2 where those words were, because the teacher created that with a normal text box instead of a title placeholder. And this just kind of allows the teacher to have a little bit more control and give a little bit more explanation when the students are working collaboratively in a slide. The students can still delete the slide, of course, but all of that information is still there in the layout. So if they delete the slide, they can go back to add a slide and pick the layout that had the directions in it. So everything's still right there.
So just to kind of reiterate, why would we want to do this? Why would we want to edit the master? No deleting of directions. There's, you can set specific requirements. You can set specific outlines. It makes it more interactive. So you can go through and you can literally put on there, I want you to do X, Y, and Z. Here's your directions. And they can't mess with those. And then those directions are there for them, because I know when I would go into classrooms and we were working on this, inevitably there would be someone who would delete the directions, and then they would say, well, I don't have the directions. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And so you kind of alleviate those excuses and those instances of those things happening. So it's nice because it kind of gives us a little more control, and everyone has the information for them, and you're not going to be losing out on things, and students aren't going to lose out on directions or anything like that.
And then another thing that you can do with Google Slides is you can do something known as choose your own adventure story. So what choose your own adventure means is when you're building a Google slide, you can have a lot of slides linked. You can have an image linked, you can have words linked. And so as students are going through, they could say, okay, what's your favorite color, blue or red, or pink or green, or all the options. Well, let's say they pick blue. Then they go to another slide that's the color blue. And maybe you're giving them, okay, well, what I want you to do is I want you to find all the images around your house that are blue and try to make a blue color wheel. Or if they picked red, it would take them to a slide that says, since your favorite color is red, I want you to find all the images around your house that are red or have red in them and try to make a red color wheel. So your students are essentially getting all of these options that are curated to them. And the teacher can build this, or students can even build this. Students can build a story where the reader chooses their different paths. So I know I used to read, I think it was Goosebumps when I was younger, and you would pick what would happen just by going to a different page. You can make this digital. And this could be a pretty massive undertaking, But we know that there are some students that would want this challenge, that would rise up to it, that would be like, well, how could I do this better? How could I make this more complicated for myself? And these students, once you show them these tools, they'll choose it for themselves, and they make amazing pieces of work.
And then for us as teachers, this is a great way. Like we said, it is a little bit of an undertaking at first, but one, it's digital. So once you have it forever. You don't have to keep remaking it. This is a great way to do review. So if you were going over a specific concept and you were reviewing, let's just say you're reviewing grammar, and they can go in and they can choose, we're working on nouns, let's just say, is this a noun or a verb? And if they choose noun, they continue on to the next problem. But if they chose verb, maybe it takes them to a different slide that explains what a noun is and gives them some more examples, some review. Then you can, once they finish that review, they can click on their answer and it takes them back to the quote unquote main review, and they can go through and they can practice that way. I've seen it used that way with reviewing concept. I've seen it reviewing like digital citizenship. So they're giving certain scenarios. How would you react in this scenario? If they chose the quote unquote right scenario, they would continue on. But if they chose the wrong scenario, it would lead them to something that would kind of review the concept that they were going over. So it's nice for students to create, but then it's also nice for us as teachers that we can use to create something like a review. And then they find it more entertaining and more engaging because they think they're playing a game or something, but they're just literally reviewing a concept that we went over in class. So how would we kind of do this in class, and how would we set it up? So you can do this with, if you were going to create an ebook, if you were going to create some type of explanation or museum slide kiosk that Satara was talking about earlier, we can use it to help students pick projects. So, you can have different options of projects that they want to do. They click on, let's say they want to make a poster. They click on that. It takes them to a slide that has directions for a poster. If they wanted to create an ebook, it takes them to the slide that has the directions for the ebook. And then we put those directions on the master slide so then they don't delete those directions. Like we said, we can do embedded intervention and enrichment. We can review. And the way that you would do this is you would highlight a word that you want to link, and then we're going to either click the link icon or we're going to do Control K. That's going to bring up the little dialog window that you see at the bottom. And then at the top where it says text, that's what we have highlighted. And then the link below is where we're going to paste our link. And then what we're going to choose is we're going to choose slide within this presentation. And then we're going to choose the slide that we want them to go to. If they click on that specific word, we want to choose the slide that we want them to go to if they choose that specific word.
And just trust in your students. Now, when you're back in your brick and mortar classroom, trust in your students, give them the space to be creative, and then just sit back and let them amaze you. Remember that computers are their world, so let them explore, create, and fail, because it's all part of learning.
Okay, that's all that we have for you guys today. We want to thank you for spending a little extra time with us today. We went a little longer than normal, but we had a lot of resources in there for you, and we wanted to make sure that we didn't just run through them quickly. We wanted to give you all the information that we have and all the resources that we have. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about Google Forms and the different ways that we can use Google Forms beyond just doing simple surveys. We're going to talk about other things that we can use it with. So that is tomorrow, same time, 10 o'clock. And then our Q&A section will follow afterwards. So again, thank you for taking time out of your day to spend with us, and we will see you shortly.